What do you get when you mix absolute power, questionable fashion choices, and a dash of world domination? History's most infamous dictators, of course. From Hitler's sinister stash to Mao's little red book of doom, we're diving into the lives of tyrants who shaped the world. Genghis Khan. It's the 13th century, and a guy named Temujin decides he's tired of the Mongol tribes fighting each other. So he unites them all and becomes Genghis Khan, the ultimate boss of the steppes. This dude was like a medieval rock star, loved by his followers, feared by his enemies. What made him great? He built the largest land empire ever, invented a super efficient postal system, and promoted religious freedom. Pretty positive for his time, right? But here's the horrible part. He also wiped out entire cities, killed millions, and used genocide as a war tactic. Yikes. Why is he famous? Simple. He changed the world. Trade routes opened up, cultures mixed, and his descendants ruled for generations. Love him or hate him, Genghis Khan left a mark on history that's still visible today. Napoleon Bonaparte. Napoleon Bonaparte, the little guy with big dreams. Born on a tiny island, this ambitious dude rocketed to the top of French society during the chaos of the Revolution. Talk about a glow-up. What made him great? Napoleon was a military genius who modernized France's laws, education, and government. He spread revolutionary ideas across Europe faster than gossip in a small town. The horrible part? His wars killed millions, and he had a nasty habit of invading countries for breakfast. Plus, he brought back slavery in French colonies. Not cool, Nap. Why is he famous? This guy crowned himself emperor, conquered most of Europe, and got exiled twice. He's the reason we have those fancy Napoleon pastries and why people still joke about Napoleon complexes. Love him or hate him, you can't ignore him. Benito Mussolini. Benito Mussolini, Italy's original tough guy. This former school teacher bullied his way to the top, becoming the world's first fascist dictator. Talk about a career change. What made him seem great? He got the trains running on time, or so they say, drained swamps, and made Italy look strong. Plus, he had a flair for dramatic speeches from balconies. Very Instagram-worthy, if it existed back then. The horrible stuff? He crushed opposition, cozied up to Hitler, and dragged Italy into a disastrous war. Oh, and he thought colonizing Ethiopia was a cool hobby. Why is he famous? Mussolini invented fascism, inspiring copycats worldwide. He turned Il Duce into a brand and made black shirts fashionable, for fascists anyway. His rise and fall became a cautionary tale about the dangers of populism and dictatorships. Adolf Hitler. Adolf Hitler, the poster boy for evil dictators. This failed artist from Austria somehow sweet-talked his way into leading Germany and then decided to try and take over the world. Talk about overcompensating. What made him seem great to some? He pulled Germany out of an economic nosedive and made Germans feel proud again after World War I. Plus, he was a mesmerizing speaker, like a terrifying TED Talk. The horrible part? Where to start? Holocaust, World War II, genocide, totalitarian oppression. He turned racism and hatred into government policy and brought destruction on an unimaginable scale. Why is he famous? Hitler's the go-to example of pure evil in human form. He reshaped the world map, sparked the worst war in history, and his actions still echo in politics and culture today. He's the universal bad guy in movies, books, and internet arguments. Joseph Stalin. Joseph Stalin, the Soviet Union's mustachioed menace. This Georgian-born strongman clawed his way to the top of the communist food chain and turned Russia into his personal playground. What made him seem great? He transformed the USSR from a farming backwater into an industrial powerhouse and helped defeat Hitler in World War II. Plus, he had a killer mustache game. The horrible stuff? Where to start? Forced collectivization? The Great Purge? Gulags galore. This guy turned paranoia into an art form, seeing enemies everywhere and sending millions to their doom. Why is he famous? Stalin's brand of communism became the blueprint for dictators worldwide. He turned the Cold War into the world's longest-running grudge match and left a legacy of fear that lingered long after he kicked the bucket. Talk about leaving your mark. Francisco Franco. Francisco Franco, Spain's very own fascist fiesta leader. This military man said no gracias to democracy and decided to run Spain his way for nearly 40 years. Talk about overstaying your welcome. What made him seem great to some? He kept Spain out of World War II, brought some economic stability, and made Spain a tourist hotspot. Plus, he made buddies with the church, which scored him points with the devout crowd. The horrible stuff? He crushed oppositions like grapes in a wine press, suppressed regional identities, and had a thing for executions. Freedom of expression? More like freedom of repression. Why is he famous? Franco kept fascism alive long after Hitler and Mussolini bit the dust. He turned Spain into Europe's odd man out and left a legacy that still has Spaniards arguing at family dinners today. Viva la controversia! Mao Zedong. Mao Zedong, China's communist kingpin. This farm boy turned revolutionary decided to give China an extreme makeover. Communist edition. What made him seem great? He unified China, kicking out foreign powers, and improved education and healthcare. Plus, he made those little red books all the rage. The horrible stuff? His great leap forward was more like a stumble into famine, and the Cultural Revolution turned neighbor against neighbor. Millions died, and Mao played real-life Sim City with people's lives. Why is he infamous? Mao's face is still on China's money, and his ideas keep influencing Chinese politics. He turned China from a sleeping giant into a world power, but at a massive human cost. Love him or hate him, Mao's the reason your iPhone says Made in China. Talk about leaving a mark on history. Pol Pot. Pol Pot, Cambodia's communist crusher. This former teacher decided to give his country the world's worst makeover, turning it into a deadly social experiment. What made him great? Spoiler alert, nothing. This guy had zero redeeming qualities. The horrible stuff? Oh boy, where to start? He emptied cities, turned the country into a giant labor camp, and decided anyone with glasses was too smart to live. His Khmer Rouge regime turned Cambodia into the infamous killing fields. Why is he famous? Pol Pot managed to kill off a quarter of Cambodia's population in just 4 years. He took communism to its most extreme and created a nightmare that still haunts Cambodia today. When people talk about real-life horror stories, Pol Pot's regime is usually Exhibit A. Idi Amin. Idi Amin, Uganda's self-proclaimed lord of all the beasts of the earth and fishes of the sea. This guy went from army boxer to dictator fast, and you can say coup d'etat. What made him seem great? He kicked out Asians and redistributed wealth, which some Ugandans initially loved. Plus, he had a flair for outrageous titles and fashion statements. The horrible stuff? Where to begin? He killed hundreds of thousands, collected human heads in his fridge, and claimed he was a cannibal. Talk about a leader with unusual tastes. Why is he famous? Amin turned Uganda into a real-life horror show, becoming the poster boy for African dictators gone wild. He mixed brutality with buffoonery, making him both terrifying and bizarrely entertaining to the international media. A true nightmare wrapped in a comedy of errors. Fidel Castro. Fidel Castro, Cuba's cigar-chomping revolutionary turned long-term leader. This bearded rebel swapped his lawyer robes for guerrilla gear and decided to give Cuba a 50-year socialist makeover. What made him seem great? He kicked out the American-backed dictator, boosted literacy rates, and gave Cuba free healthcare. Plus, he had more lives than a cat, surviving countless CIA assassination attempts. The horrible stuff? He crushed opposition, turned Cuba into a one-party state, and tanked the economy. Freedom of speech? More like freedom to agree with Fidel. Why is he famous? Castro turned tiny Cuba into a Cold War hotspot, stared down the U.S., and exported revolution like Cuba exports rum. He outlasted 11 U.S. presidents and kept socialism alive long after the Soviet Union kicked the bucket. Love him or hate him, Fidel sure knew how to leave a mark. Muammar Gaddafi. Muammar Gaddafi, Libya's king of kings and fashion icon of the dictator set. This desert-dwelling diva seized power in a coup and decided to run Libya like his personal playground for over 4 decades. What made him seem great? He shared oil wealth, improved literacy, and stood up to Western powers. Plus, he had a wardrobe that made Lady Gaga jealous. The horrible stuff? He crushed dissent, sponsored terrorism, and had a habit for rambling for hours on TV. Oh, and he kept a team of female bodyguards. Talk about job perks. Why is he famous? Gaddafi was the ultimate international bad boy, flip-flopping between terrorist and ally. He turned Libya into a rogue state, gave incredibly long Union speeches, and met a gruesome end during the Arab Spring. A true dictator drama queen to the very end. Kim Jong-il. Last but not least, let's dive into the bizarre world of Kim Jong-il, North Korea's pint-sized dear leader with a passion for platform shoes and Hollywood flicks. This guy inherited a dictatorship and decided to crank the crazy up to 11. What made him seem great? Well, if you believe North Korean propaganda, he invented the hamburger and could control the weather. Cool trick, right? The horrible stuff? He turned North Korea into the world's biggest prison, starved his people while building nukes, and had a habit of kidnapping foreign actors for his movie collection. Talk about a twisted Netflix and chill. Why is he infamous? Kim Jong-il perfected the art of nuclear blackmail, rocked a bouffant that defied gravity, and created a personality cult so intense it makes boy bands look low-key. He left the world both terrified and scratching its head in bewilderment.